we have arrived at the moment you've all been waiting for to actually dive into cleaning my disgusting Triflex. That is my actual vacuum from home with cat hair and carpet fuzz and dirt and all. This particular video is going to be way more above and beyond than the other tutorials you may have already seen on our channel. We're going to take this apart, going to show you all the little nooks and crannies that have to be addressed on this particular model. Obviously, if you have a Miele Triflex, that's awesome. You can follow along very literally and apply these techniques at home to keeping your Triflex clean and working as beautifully for as long as possible. It is super important if you fall behind in the maintenance, these will clog up, they will not perform well, you lose battery runtime, they'll start to stink. It's just not a good time. These tips should also apply to other brands of stick vacuum and even just bagless vacuums in general. Some of the tips, especially when we come down to talking about the electric power nozzle section, that's going to apply to more vacuums still. So other uprights and also the power nozzles of canister type vacuums, whether they're bagged or bagless. And lastly, if you too are a vacuum cleaner store and vacuum service provider, I hope that some of these tips that I show you and that we employ here at our shop can carry over to your shop and then ultimately have a better result for your customer and really improve that relationship that you formed. No matter what vacuum we have, stick with me. We're going to go through step by step, nice and methodically. And if nothing else, this is super gratifying. So I hope you enjoy it, even just for that. Let's get to it. I would not do this in your kitchen by where you prepare food. This all you see here is my setup here at Queen Vacuum. So hopefully you can recreate something like this. And don't forget to get your rags, your little screwdrivers, your little pokey and brushy tools, a little bit of cleaner, and hopefully good lighting, a nice surface. If you have just a bare surface that you can like wash and wipe down, that's even better. So without further ado, let's tackle my terrible, disgusting, dirty Triflex. So in this case, what all I want to do is take her off the base. So we already have the main body off. Really, I just like to start by breaking everything down, taking all the sections apart. So you saw how the power nozzle comes off. You do not have to do this, but I just, because you can, I take the battery off. This will remind me to later on to test the voltage because I don't want to forget to do that. I'm going to take off the wand. I don't need to separate the handle here. All right, so this is where we're going to spend probably the majority of our time is on the main body, the actual dirt bin of the Triflex. Now, you can see I have been a very bad girl. The max fill line is right here. Well, the cat hair and my hair is just piled up on here. Inside of this bin is where the filter lives. There's actually a pre-screen. And so this vacuum is not breathing very well. And the filter is inside here. So that is one very important thing to keep in mind, guys, at home is on these bagless machines, you need to watch the fill line because the machines cannot breathe at all once the debris has gone up higher than that. So I want to just basically just empty this out. You'd be normally doing this in a garbage can on the Triflex. If you hold it like this, you can see that there is a little arrow. We're going to turn from, like if this were a clock face, we're going to turn to about 10 o'clock and the bin comes right off. There is a little bit of fine dust and debris that does accumulate here. We'll come back to that later. That's easy to kind of vacuum and wipe out. The main thing is this part. Once we turn this one more time, the dirt bin is going to fly open. Let's just pretend like we're at home. We're going to empty this out in the garbage can. Look at the side of the bin. See this big meaty chunky part? And look at the grippies. That's where you want to hold it as you are traveling to your garbage can. Because you can take your free hand, continue turning, and that's what engages the little flap to unlock. If you had been holding this another weird way, you could have gotten dirt all over yourself. So utilize these comfy hand grips both up here and down here. But now that our bin is open, clearly not everything came out. And that's one of the things that can happen when you have failed to honor the maximum fill line and stuff has climbed all the way up here. So how do you get this stuff out? Well, that won't come out from like any amount of whacking it. you can employ a couple different techniques. One of them is to get a pokey thing, a chapstick. This is like a straw pipe cleaner thing. I was talking about one of these tools that I have. This has a little handy hooky thing at the end. So when you're over the garbage can, you can feel free to go rummaging here and try to pull that debris down and out. And in case you hadn't noticed, this could start making a mess. But if this is just part of your normal maintenance, getting this stuff out of the bin and into the garbage can, that's what you want to do. But when we are deep cleaning, this is another really important feature that you may not have realized about your Triflex, is that this whole bin separates, okay? And this is how we begin the deep cleaning process. So we've opened up at, what is this? Maybe like, I don't know, 10 o'clock. When you continue turning this inner portion to about 9 o'clock, keep going, you'll feel a little click. Wiggle, 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 and this whole thing comes out. Now, we're going to come back to this because, as you can see, there are no electronics inside here. There's no filter. Everything is wide open, and this is very, very easy to clean. I love this because many bagless vacuums do not have a shroud that can come off with no electronics that you can actually wash properly. Even Dyson, sometimes you have to watch because there'll be little electrical plugs or contacts that are still attached to the bin that you do not want to immerse in water. So that's something to look for on your vacuum. Okay, so we're going to come back to that. But now this is the filter section. You can see how the filter's sitting inside here. This is like a pre-screen, and of course there is delightful stuff on top of it. But on this HX1, this filter just pops out. She's going to pull it straight up and out, and be careful because yes, the dirt is alive in there. From day to day, you just be tapping this out in the garbage can. And secondarily, there's one more filter down inside. Again, this is an HX1, and this filter twists out, okay? And that also can be tapped out. You'll see that there is debris that lives inside this inner chamber, and that has to come out as well. Now, while I'm doing this for my customers here back on my bench, I would be utilizing my bagged canister vacuum, my Miele that I showed you that's under my workbench, to be suctioning this stuff out so I don't have it loose in a garbage can. It's much more hygienic for me. Going back to this little shroud, again, there are no electronics in it, okay? You can see that there's some buildup in here in the screen. It'll work very nicely just to wash it in the sink. Okay, so now the only part that's really safely washable, aside from the inner cyclone, is the outer bin. And so we're gonna take a little field trip to the slop sink, and I'm gonna take my old toothbrush and one of these pipe cleaner things. And not that this is bad, but I'm just gonna show you how to wash this effectively. All right, so here we are in the back of the shop at our glorious slop sink. So I'm not a super germaphobe, but still I like to be mindful of what you're putting where. You might want to consider doing this someplace that's not where you prepare food. So let's flip around and take a look at what we have in the sink. All right, so what do we have here? I actually snuck in a couple other things. This is the outer dirt bin of my Triflex HX1 that I was just working on. Now again, I vacuumed this out and wiped it out quite a lot, so it's really not that bad, but I'm just gonna show you what it's like to wash it. And I also took the liberty of taking apart the HX2, the demo vacuum. Now I did not vacuum and kind of pre-wipe this one out, so this is pretty much fully dirty. But I just want to show you like how to get some of these little areas that can accumulate a little bit of dirt. And especially this one, the shroud, again, was not washed or vacuumed or scrubbed or anything like that prior. So we're just going to go full on washing this out. Obviously the filter is removed, as you can see. So let's get to the washing. We're just going to use warm, not crazy hot, please, don't burn yourself, water. And with these, just giving it a good rinse works really well. I'll keep the lid closed, the bottom lid closed here just for now so that the water can run in there. Give it a little swish. And then you'll see on this side, this is where the dirt would be traveling. And if you look carefully, look down where the water goes, and you see how it's going right out this chute. Sometimes you'll get some dirt accumulating right in this area, and it's a little hard to catch. or snake out, but just letting the water run through it. That's what's really nice about the Triflex, is that they have a very, very simple yet effective path where the dirt goes. So there are not too many horrible nooks and crannies. Makes it easy to clean. You can try to drop the water in this way. But you'll see, this is why I brought my little pipe cleaner guy, because if I was having a hard time getting into this area, you can put a bend in your pipe cleaner, and you can try snaking it into this area and scrubbing that out. See what I'm saying? Pick up what I'm putting down? Okay, so you get the idea. And the same thing, if you wanted to straighten it back out, you can rummage through there, or take your trusty toothbrush and scrub away. You can add a little bit of your favorite cleaner. Let's just do that. Why not? Because it's fun and it smells good. You don't gotta go nuts, but just enough to kind of loosen the dust, loosen the dirt. These areas here tend to get some accumulation of muddy stuff, or maybe things that have, when you whack it on the side of the garbage can, you want to get all that. Same thing with this guy. You can see some of the dirt coming out of that. This little rubber part tends to work better when you wet it, whether with a rag or like this. Again, let that stuff just swish around. Again, in this case, scrubbing it with the brush really does help. Check under here. Give that one good rinse, and then we will meet back up out there at the service bench. Now, if you have the luxury of a place to dry things outside, it really can't hurt to take these guys after you've kind of just, dried them off with a towel. Give them a little shake outside. Some of these little crevices, like in here, and especially in here, can accumulate some water. So I don't want that pooling. So this would be a great time to take it outside, give that a little shake, let some of that come out. Go back with your towel and dry that as best you can, and then leave them out to dry in the sun. Again, give it a little shake and leave them out in the sun to dry if you can. Otherwise, back to the workbench we go. So now that we're back at the workbench, let's use our little task light here and inspect our work. This is why I keep just an old dish rag, just an old towel, something to keep my bench from getting wet. And we can kind of just pat dry our beautifully clean elements of the vacuum cleaner. Okay. Now some areas like in here, you're gonna have to get in there a little more carefully, and especially down in there. That's why I recommended kind of shaking it outside and letting it get some fresh air. Helps that evaporate a little bit better. Or you could even carefully take your hair dryer if you did feel there was a lot of water left in there and it's not coming out otherwise. Feel free to take your hair dryer or a fan on a cool temperature and just blow in there just to help that evaporate out more quickly. But otherwise, again, there's no electronics or anything like that in here. We just want to make sure that it dries as quickly as possible. One, so we can just be finished, but two, because you don't want lingering water to make mud or to encourage mold growth. So it is important to make sure that everything is very, very dry. Before embarking on this adventure, definitely set aside time to allow for that, okay? At least a day, just to be safe, because it does depend on atmospheric conditions and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes it's just yucky and humid, even though it's hot. And sometimes it's just cold and things don't dry well. So you want to make sure, again, all these little areas in here are nicely dried. And then also in here and in this tube. Again, putting your little fan or hair dryer or fan can really help accelerate that drying process. All right, so just inspecting our work, I think we did a really good job. All the gook is out of the dirt bin here on both sides. This outer shroud looks nice and clean. This little tunnel is nice and clean. And we just gotta wait for this to dry a little bit more. You can see there's a little bit of condensation still in there. One place you do want to just be careful of is some water can sneak into this little tiny groove and that's where you'll see some water on the back side, and that's where I recommend, using your fan or using the sun to kind of dry this out even more. But honestly, guys, this was kind of above and beyond, and there are some vacuums where we really do have to do this because they're so gross with yucky, dirty, smelly dogginess. But in reality, more often than not, we don't even have to go this far as to wash it. You can, like I mentioned before, with your damp rag, just wiping, using your tools to get in there, get in all these awkward spots. You can really do just about everything you need to do without even a sink. Let's face it, anything is better than nothing. Point is, this is what we would do for you, but you don't gotta go this crazy at home if you really don't have the facility and the stuff to do it. So now that we've pretty much washed everything that can be washed, we're gonna start reversing the process. In the case of the HX1, we need to put this little guy back down inside the filter area. So that's just twists in, okay? Make sure that's nice and tight. The filter has been dry cleaned. That just presses down inside. Give it a twist until it just wants to drop down. And then it'll seat to the face here. And then we're going to put this whole gizmo back inside the cyclone. So once again, we like looking at this like a clock face. 12 o'clock is here. You can hold by the meaty part up here and hold this in whatever hand you're comfortable. And we're gonna put this in at the 9 o'clock position, okay? Once you give it a wiggle, you'll start to feel it kind of slipping into place, okay? You have to do it kind of blind, but once you do that, you're kind of pushing and just giving a little jostle, you'll feel it drop in and catch, and then it'll naturally want to start turning back clockwise. And once you're done with that, your bin snaps all together, and that part is done. A quick thing to address before we put the whole cyclone dirt bin back on the vacuum is to we want to give this part here a wipe. Now I did pre-vacuum that a little bit, but it's a little hard to get in there. So just take your damp rag, wipe out there as best as you can. Once again, you might need a little tool to kind of mush some of that dirt around that, because there's like little ridges and stuff in here. So using a tool intermittently really helps kind of loosen it into a place where the rag can actually get at it. You don't got to go bananas, guys, but you just want to make sure that it is decent. Dry that out. And in case you don't know, the trick for lining this up nicely, see the little groove here, that little channel? There's a matching groove up here on the handle. And all that helps you do is just kind of line up the body. And then once you get it in place, it just snaps down. You'll get a good satisfying click. And that part is done. Now we're getting to what might arguably be the more exciting part. And this is called the electric power nozzle, and this is what also may apply to other vacuums that you might have, whether it be a bagged canister vacuum, a regular upright, what have you. But this is a part that has a little motor and a spinning brush roller, and boy oh boy can it accumulate a lot of junk, and there are some very specific techniques that you want to employ to get that all cleaned out. But this is also a great example of, just because, it's down on the ground, it's at the source of the dirt, there's some features here like the corrugated tubing, things that a lot of other vacuums have, that like, how do you clean all that? How do you get the dirt out of all the ridges and stuff? Because you can't like take apart and wash this whole thing. That's just not going to happen. So we are going to dig into this a little bit more. And this is also where we're going to start employing some of our fun tools, our little brushes, our tweezers, our scissor, in some cases, our knife. We're going to talk about how you're going to use those in the power nozzle with the brush roller and all that stuff. And again, this is going to apply to a lot of other vacuums, so please pay really close attention to this section. Okay, so we are zooming in here on the electric power nozzle of the Miele Triflex, and we're going to take this off by just pressing this little button and pulling off away the vacuum that is already quite nice and clean. So quick anatomy, this neck will recline. When you flip it over, you can take a look and see the debris. Let's take our little guy here. And you can see all the debris accumulation inside of here. This is just, this is my hair. This is strings from I don't know, random from my sewing, just from clothes, from carpet. This is normal accumulation, and Miele makes this really, really easy to remove. Now, you may have another vacuum at home that has a spinning brush roller, and the easiest way to get this stuff out is to actually cut it. So whether you want to take a scissor, kind of get in there, lift it up. Now watch cutting your bristles. You can cut it like that, and now this debris will come out a million times more easily. Okay, that's really, really important to do, because when these bristles are completely obstructed and full of hair, they're not brushing the carpet anymore. That's what's doing the work to clean the rug. Okay, so away that goes. Now I would normally have my service vacuum going, and so I could just suck that away, but we'll stick it there for now. What I actually like to do is to utilize, there's little grooves that Miele puts on these brushes in order to make this much easier. If you take a knife or again or scissor and you drop the knife point into this little groove, it allows you to cut those strings much more easily. If you do it on the front side, again on the back side, there's a second groove. Get the whole thing, okay? If you do nothing else, when you run this on the rug the next time, just the action of the brush spinning and catching on the rug, a lot of this stuff will clear itself. But for our sake here, we're just gonna pull this out, okay? But once it is cut, it just comes out much, much, much more easily, okay? If this hurts your fingers, or if you feel like it can't get your fingers in there, this is where I would utilize my awesome, this is like a wider, grippier, blunt tweezer. If you're having a hard time reaching or getting your fingers in there, you can coax things up off of bristles. If it's kind of like entangled or embedded in the bristles, sometimes you'll get like fuzz balls. So you can carefully take your tweezers and comb through like this to get little fuzz balls out. But I'm gonna run my vacuum and make this easier just so you can see. Bye guys. What I want you to see here is when you get sometimes debris and fuzz, carpet fiber, stuff that's getting embedded in the bristles, you obviously don't want to be yanking on the bristles and ripping them out. That's not great. But sometimes you'll get places where it'll kind of accumulate in there and it's hard to rake it out. Now, do you have to be absolutely crazy neurotic about this? No. Again, you just don't want the bristles so occluded with hair that it can't brush effectively. But all the little air gaps in between actually kind of do help with the airflow as well. So if it's just completely stuck full of fuzz balls every square inch of the bristles and at their bases, it really helps to get as much of it out as you can. Just kind of running that through vertically and just kind of pinching a little bit as I go, just very gently, kind of helps get some of that debris out of there. And most especially, utilizing my other vacuum suction to help guide the stuff up and suck it away as I'm lifting it with the tweezers makes it work so much better. I'm not going to bore you with too much of this, but I just wanted you to see what I was talking about. Okay, and then the next part is we have to go inside. We need to take this brush out. In some cases you'll find it's a little easier to clean when it's out. That's up to you. But we need to address the bearing end cap, and then also we need to clean inside this suction channel where there's accumulation, that you can see not only from this top side in the clear window, but also back inside here. We want to get all of that out. So the next step is to take this whole brush roller out. This is not perfect yet, but we'll come back to it. So on your Triflex, if you look here, it's kind of hiding back here on the passenger side. There's a little latch, and when you bring it to your left, it'll unlock this magic trap door. So if you see there's a little arrow here, this will lift up, and now you have access to this brush. Grab this little handle with your fingers here and pull it straight out, and voila, no tools required. Your brush roller is out. So you may find that it's easier to clean this out of the vacuum. This may have a little bit of a dust and accumulation on it. Taking your nice damp microfiber rag will help, again, coax more stuff out of the bristles, wash the actual brush roller itself. I find in doggy households, there tends to be a waxy, grayish brown film that develops on all brush rollers of all vacuum cleaners. And you don't want to immerse your brush rollers. You don't want to get your bearings wet and stuff. But utilizing a nice rag will help clean the bristles and just kind of does everything all at once. So this is why I'm doing it this way, so you can see. So the next part here is this little bearing end cap. This is very important because this is designed to come off. You can just like pop it off like a champagne cork if you want. But what we're looking for is inside here in this bearing. What we're searching for are hairballs, and this is another time when our tweezer is going to be our friend. This is what actually allows the brush roller to spin, this bearing. You definitely want to make sure that all of that debris is removed, because that will make it very hard for the brush roller to spin in that bearing. The more debris that's in there, the tighter it will fit, and it'll be hard to spin. It'll generate heat enough that the plastic here can melt. Okay, so I see this most especially in households that have long, beautiful hair. They neglect to take this off. They'll get hairballs in here, and these will utterly just melt and seize to the brush roller, and it won't spin anymore. And yes, you can replace the brush, but you shouldn't have to do that if you do the basic maintenance. All right, so that looks better. Okay, so just pop this back together like that, boop, and that spins nice and freely. And this can go back in here once we are done cleaning out inside of here. So if you look at all the accumulation inside of here, this is because I'm not the most careful person. I'm a very bad vacuum mom. You're gonna get some dust and debris, but what you see kind of stuck in here is where I ran over the front doormat when it was still a little bit wet, and from like being a rainy day. And it will spit up water, which will then mix with the dirt, and that's how you'll get this caking that you see inside here. Totally yucko. So the way that we clean this is a couple different ways. As always, I like to do what I call dry cleaning first. I'm going to put on my vacuum, and I'm going to brush this out as much as I can dry. So hopefully you can see this well enough. Going in there with the toothbrush, and this is a case where I'm using the angled toothbrush, where basically we just kind of heated this up and went, so this is the example of this being at this angle makes it way easier to reach at this awkward trajectory to get in here and scrub this stuff away. Again, having the vacuum cleaner running while I'm doing this just helps with the stuff that's getting kicked up from going into my face. The reason I don't want to add a lot of water in here is because there is an mechanical and electrical component right here. This is the drive pin that's actually making the brush roller spin. That's the source of the spinning. And there's a little transmission and your motor's in here. So we just want to be very, very careful about adding water, but you will see that I will need to do it momentarily. So you want to spin it around. You want to check on this side as well. Okay, so I'm turning on my vacuum, and I'm gonna utilize the crevice tool for this, because this really allows me to get in here tight and amplify the suction in these tight places. My tweezers, these guys. Before I clean too much more, this is something very, very, very important that I need you to see. So the actual drive motor is inside this head unit and this pin that comes out, and this is what spins and drives the brush roller, okay? Fits into there. And that's what drives the whole brush system. But look very carefully what we're seeing here. There is some hair and string accumulation in here. Now this is not like the other side where you can just pop off a thing and get that debris out of there. But if you're seeing this, I want you at home to try to take your tweezer and extract what you can. It is hard to get a grip on it sometimes. If this starts accumulating a lot on the inside, you're going to need to bring it in, because we will have to dismantle this assembly and clean it out from the inside, because eventually this will seize and it will not allow the brush to spin, and you're going to be hating life. Now this applies to many other vacuums. There are places that are not readily cleanable. Because they're part of the electronic system or part of the motor system, they're not places that are accessible. As you see, these are all Torx screws. That's telling you hands off. These are no places for you at home, okay? Because all the electronics and motor and all that fancy stuff's inside. So you do what you can, but if you start seeing this, again, take out what you can. And otherwise, if you start noticing that the brush roller is stopping periodically when it would normally go, that could be your clue that this has too much accumulation and does need to be professionally serviced out. If you keep going, you will just seize this and it will have to be replaced, and that's kind of an expensive part. And neglect is not covered under warranty, so that's just part of life, guys. You gotta watch that. But just get what you can out of this. I'm going to dig that out, and then we'll move on to our final cleaning of just kind of wet cleaning out the rest of the residue in here. So it's really important to make sure before you move on to the wet cleaning stage that you've addressed all of the suction channels, that there are no clogs or obstructions formed in here. You can look through down here. You want to take your pipe cleaner and do a little sweep in there. Make sure that you don't feel anything blocking your way. It'll pull some of it out in case that there is. You want to check top side here going down that way. Same thing. And just kind of root around in there gently and just make sure that there's no obstructions. And that is definitely where I like to use my other vacuum suction to suck out whatever might be lingering in there, and also just to keep my workstation a little bit cleaner. But so do make sure that you go through and address all of that first, again, before you start with the wet cleaning. So this is the last part of the inside of the housing cleaning that we're going to do now wet, since we've gotten as much off as dry as possible. So this is where you can take your favorite cleaner, just a tad, not a ton, and go ahead and take your toothbrush and scrub out this housing. Okay, the little window. Got to spin it around and take a look all around because it's hard to see sometimes. So scrub. Do your best. Then again, go back with your damp rag and you can just kind of wipe all of that out. Once again, you may need to invoke your specialty tools that have like the grooves to get in all these difficult places. You may need to do that when it comes to that suction channel right there. You see all that stuff? Yeah. I'm going to need to put the phone down to like do this. What I recommend, rather than just going spraying everything all over the place, is to be a little more strategic. Have your wet microfiber rag ready, your toothbrush. Just spray your toothbrush first. Okay, that way it's kind of a controlled spray, and then you can get in there and deliver that cleaning power without making an utter mess all over the place. The same thing applies to the rag itself. You can spray the rag and then go in there secondarily without making a mess. So once again, just kind of like take your time, take a look at everything, go over everything with your little rag, flip it around, just get different angles, because there's a lot of nooks and crannies in these, any bagless vacuum, any power nozzle, and you might need to go back with some of your little tools. Yeah, I'm being super neurotic control freak about this. I'm doing this for customers who are asking me to do this, and I don't want to hand it back and to get the little, get the little face and the little like finger poke that it's not clean enough. So I have very high standards when it comes to my own stuff, but more so when it comes to delivering this to my customer. I really want to make sure we do a good job, unless they have like set a limit, like, hey, just do whatever you can do for $30 and like that's it. That very much limits my time of how perfect I can get it. There's levels of things. We have cleaner than it came in, clean enough, and then there's like clean. So I do definitely like to make sure that I get a sense of that from my customer at the time that they're dropping off. What are their expectations? In some cases, their concern has to do with odors, and that's a really tricky one because especially when it comes to dogs, things like that. oils, the oils in their fur, that kind of stuff can really, really penetrate and impregnate in plastics, and there's just no getting rid of all of it. Can we get it a lot cleaner? Yes, we can. But it's never going to be perfect, and they need to know that going into it. That's really important. Otherwise, you know, they're going to be pretty upset. And you at home just doing it for yourself, don't beat yourself up if when you're all finished, if it still smells a little bit like dog, that's kind of the way it is. These also, the Triflexes have, and some other vacuums do too, there's like other filter material and like padding or muffler material that's deep inside the body, like around the motor, and it can harbor odors, but it's not a readily removable and replaceable filter, so you got to keep that in mind. So do your best, take your time, go back with your dry rag and make sure that there's nothing like lingering in there. Don't forget the wheels. These are really important. You want to make sure that they're not bound up, that they actually are spinning. That's important. Also, these are rubberized, which is really nice. That's what makes these so nice on bare floors. But they can get a little bit of accumulation. So as you see, I did this one. We want to make sure that these wheels are clean. And the easiest way to do that, again, is with your nice microfiber rag. And just kind of scrub it with your hand. Spin it, spin it, spin it. Scrub, scrub, scrub. And then just dry it. Make sure that that's okay. You also don't want to forget these little front wheels. A lot of vacuums utilize these little tiny guys. They're on like a little axle, and you want to make sure that these do spin. If they've got a lot of hair and stuff accumulated on there, they will get really bound up, and that's a place where, this is not the great example because mine's pretty fine, but that's where you can go in there with your little knife and try to like cut away the hair, pull it out with your tweezers, and get this spinning again. In some cases, these wheels can be popped out. Gotta be very careful, but they can be kind of pried out with a flathead screwdriver, and you can clean the axle off that way. But you just want to be really, really careful because these casings can be very fragile, and you don't want to crack that casing because the wheel will never go back in there. These 4 wheels are important for the balance and the clearance on the floor. You do not want the casing just dragging on the floor without these wheels. There are some little scuffy helper things on the side here, but these wheels are real important. So make sure that they're free and make sure that they're as clean as you can. Again, just kind of rubbing them perpendicularly to their travel path with your microfiber should take care of that really nicely, and that'll keep your floors from getting scratched. So I am feeling quite satisfied with the cleanliness of the inside of this, and the brush roller itself looks so much better than it did. So we're just going to reverse the process and reinstall this brush. So just remember that you have this unlocked. This door needs to swing up and open. Then you can be inspecting as you go through, make sure that that's clean. And you'll see that this is kind of like a D-shaped opening. Your little brush here, the bearing is sliding into that, and it only goes one way. It's like a puzzle piece, it matches. So your brush will go in, and this will ultimately match right there. But you just want to guide this little guy over to that shaft that we cleaned before. Okay, press it down, very, very easy, and it's in place. So again, it only goes one way. Just make sure that it's pressed in, and then this door can close down, and then just lock it up, and now that brush roller is good to go. So nice and clean. Everything looks really good. And then the last part that we're going to tackle are the little detaily things, like the little fuzzies that are in here, and in some cases scuffs and paint. So we also want to make sure that the top of the casing is as clean as we can get it. Keep in mind, this is the part that gets the most abuse, as it's like banging around the house and around the corners and under the coffee table. So you're likely to see some scratching and gouging. It's just kind of comes with the territory. So I do like to give it a wipe down with the rag again. And again, being neurotic me, these little casing crevices, you can go in there with your brush, work that out, utilizing the deeper pile side of your microfiber to get in there. If you still can't seem to get in there well enough, this is where you can utilize your other little brushes and the pokey side. Wrap your rag like that, and you can get that into these crevices and sweep them out in one shot. So I really like doing that. That really applies when you get to areas like here in the wheels, like where I can't get my finger in there. Again, where you can take the rag, wrap your tool with it, and now you can get in those areas that are like behind the wheels, okay? In all those nooks and crannies, that nook and cranny. You're gonna do a lot of flipping around and checking from different angles. Hopefully you have a decent light. Because once everything's clean, you will then all of a sudden notice things that don't look so clean. And I don't like catching that at the last minute when I'm handing this back to a customer, seeing a spot that I missed. That's like very embarrassing. I don't want to do that. So down in here is a little bit tougher because again, that is corrugated. So you can take your toothbrush and if there's a lot of dirt in there, if you have this already kind of moistened, that will get a lot of that out. You can kind of clean it in between. Another tip is to do the dry cleaning like I always recommend doing first. Taking your vacuum cleaner, using your brush dry, and sectioning like so. This is hard to film, guys. I'm so sorry. I think you get the idea. You just want to take your time, you know, be creative, use the tools you have. Again, the toothbrushes work fantastic in these extremely awkward, tight, and hard to reach places. That's something you're gonna have to kind of take your time with. I don't have the patience right now. So again, flip it around, look at different angles. This little spot back here is another one. Again, I really can't quite get in there with my finger, but you can push that through. And now I can get all the way in behind this hose, underneath here, and all of that. You get the idea, guys. Okay, so just take your time. We are very near the end, and we are going to address one very small and final detail, which you'll probably see even more of this on your big vacuum. And it has to do with the paint scratches that come from just whacking things into the walls. So what are some of the ways that are the most effective to get rid of this? Now, unfortunately, I don't have a ton on this vacuum, but hopefully there's enough where you can get an idea. So there's a couple different things that we use. Just high grade isopropyl rubbing alcohol, either 70% or 90%, can work really, really well to help dissolve things like paint and greasy stuff. But honestly, what I like using first is this product that is an oil-based, like a citrus oil-based product. I've decanted it into a little squirt bottle to make it easier to use, but it's called Citrus Split. Kirby makes it actually, but this is an oil base. And all I like to do is to take a piece, like a little spongy, scrubby thing, or whatever you got, but usually something that's can withstand some rubbing, and apply that to the paint that you see, okay, where you got your scuffs. Now, I'm going to warn you, sometimes depending on what kind of paint it is and how much is on there and how much it has become one with the body of the vacuum, like the plastic, sometimes it's not going to come off. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to get quite a lot of it off. And once you do, it is so gratifying. Customers really appreciate it. I like to get it on there and then give it a minute or so to just kind of like do its thing to dissolve this paint. But it's a wonderful product because it's not toxic. Even though it's such a great degreaser, it doesn't seem to bother my skin. Now, I'm not super sensitive, but still, I'm like a human. And so it doesn't bother me. I use this stuff a ton to get like the gluey stuff when I'm trying to like clean off a jar. It'll take Sharpie marker off of things, off of your skin, but it just seems to do a beautiful job on the plastic of a vacuum cleaner without incurring damage. And I mentioned that because another popular choice is a Mr. Clean Magic Eraser. I mentioned at another time that I like to kind of cut these down because they're so big and they tend to flatten out and disintegrate really fast. Now these need to be wetted in order to work, but what you got to remember, guys, is that this is basically a very fine wet sanding block. So on some types of areas, it can work just fine, but on a shiny part of the vacuum, you go to town with the magic eraser and it is going to dull that. It will get rid of the paint. Oh, sure it will, but it's gonna look terrible. It's gonna look really, really dull. So yes, can you use a magic eraser? You can, but you gotta be really, really careful about how and where you use it. Again, using the citrus split usually gets most of everything. And then sometimes we can combine that with a little bit of that rubbing alcohol, and that might just literally solve, as in dissolve, the rest of it, and also clean off the oily residue really nicely. So I think that did pretty well. I think that looks better. And again, same thing on this side. I missed a couple spots. But this also just helps plastics look nice too. It just kind of conditions it a little bit. Just get rid of that residue, and now that looks really, really good. Voila. Okay, this is so exciting. So we got everything really nice and clean and spiffy. All the parts are dried. I am very happy with the results. So let's now reverse the process and put her back together. And then we're gonna do a little test. So let's start by first, let's put the battery back on. I had just taken this off just to make it a little bit lighter to move around. Let's put this back on here. Down she goes, click. I almost forgot, there's a couple little places you want to double check too. Depending on how you have your Triflex oriented, your wand is either going to be on the end of the nose, or in this case here when it's in comfort mode. So just make sure that you have also addressed little points like this. There are some little places where some dust can sneak out. We just want to make sure that that is nice and clean. Okay, and then also, now this part, this is kind of a dead end. There's no suction going through here. That's just kind of resting the tube. But you want to make sure that that little port is cleaned out. But when people are using this in the other orientation, in the long extended mode, dirt is going to be traveling through this wand. So you got to make sure that that comes off, and that you do check the length of this tube to make sure that there's nothing obstructed in it if people are using it in reach mode. So just make sure that that's okay. Put that back in place. Put our bin back on. Boop. And the wand. All right. She's ready for the final test drive. Make sure everything works. Yeah. Sweet! So exciting! So there we have it. Our Miele Triflex is all now nice and clean and detailed. If you were following along at home, I hope you found these tips really helpful. I hope you found ways to do it a little easier than maybe you tried it before, or that it's more hygienic, but that the results are much better than you ever had attempted before. If you're a vacuum store also, I hope that you found some of the tips useful. If there were some techniques that you had not yet tried, I hope that it makes the services for your customers much, much more effective, more beautiful, and easier on you. I'm happy to be taking my vacuum home now because I have missed her in this time that I've been filming this. So thank you so much for following along, guys. I really appreciate your time staying with me. I hope these tips have been really helpful. And if you did find them helpful, please let us know what else you'd like us to cover in the future. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe. Those three are crucial, and the subscription portion really helps keep us going and keeps the YouTube overlords happy. Ring the little bell to be notified when we have new content coming out. Take care, guys. We love you all so much. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.